And at this point, we do have some individuals who contacted us and wanted to speak. And okay, so we would just ask that you would keep your comments succinct, perhaps 5 to 10 minutes. There are 5 people. And so to stick to our schedule, if you could pay attention to the time. And so the first person that wanted to come forward and speak about their knowledge and experience and the feedback is Christy Warhurst. If you would come forward, Christy. Welcome to the committee. If you could just state your name and who you represent.
Christy Warhurst, and I represent myself.
Okay.
Right. Hello, my name is Christy Warhurst. Thank you for asking me to share my story about why I pulled my son out of Boise School's academic classes. He is now dually enrolled in Idaho Virtual Academy so that I can monitor his homework and in-class assignments. He still attends high school at Capitol for JROTC and the DTech Center for Auto Body. I didn't just decide overnight to pull him out of the brick and mortar schools. The first assignment I remember to be inappropriate was in his 8th grade reading class at Fairmont Junior High. He brought home a sentence structure assignment instead of the example sentences being Dick and Jane walk the dog down the street. The content was about Occupy Wall Street from LeBron James's perspective. Even now within the virtual academy, his English teacher assigned a list of topics for students to write an essay on. The choices were Black Lives Matter and similar topics. My son had something else in mind to write about, and thankfully the teacher was welcoming to his choice. I want to give you more of a background as to why the assignment I'm going to share with you was the icing on the cake. I would have never known this was assigned if my son didn't bring it home because he was falling behind in class. I grew up going to Catholic school, but never really aligned with or understood God. I knew at an early age that I was an atheist. I lived in the collective and sought advice from self-help leaders, yet I was completely miserable. To be honest, I was rejected so much by the collective that suicidal thoughts were frequent. I thought it was normal to think this way. I started attending Bible study out of curiosity. At one of these Bible studies, a woman asked me what brought me hope. I was all, what is hope? I thought of hope as, I hope I win the lottery, a throwaway hope. We looked up a few definitions of hope, and it said giddy anticipation, something like a light turned on inside of me. There was this sense of clarity, fullness, and aliveness that I'd never felt before. Ever since then, I had not had a single thought of suicide and found it was not normal to think that way. I realized that I can love myself as an individual and that the only approval I needed was from God, and He already approved of me. I never got this unconditional approval from the collective. Now, what does this have to do with me pulling my son out of Boise School academics? Well, let's take a look at the assignment. Our collective future. Stories connect us to ourselves and each other. Stories connect us to ideas and actions. Stories connect us to the past, the present, and the future. We cannot become what we cannot imagine. Stories of our collective future will connect us to the possibilities of a world where everyone is valuable for their whole selves. Everyone belongs and everyone can thrive. Through stories, we are beginning to understand how deeply interconnected we are to each other, to all living beings, and the earth. This gives us hope that violence will no longer be a common occurrence and that collective thriving is possible. When you consciously read the introduction, you also absorb the illustration into your subconscious mind. Notice in the illustration all the garbage on the floor, natural light and candles on the wall. The boy appears to be in his pajamas. He is using a typewriter instead of a computer, and he has a bicycle to help with the environment. What does collective thriving mean? Collective thriving while the whole self is living in filth, mediocrity, without power, saving the environment by riding a bike, yet at the same time surrounded by trash? Is this collective thriving? The whole self in this assignment is the collective. The individual is invisible. I think the wording of whole self is misleading. Who gets to teach who the whole self is? The people who write the assignments, teachers, atheists, or parents and God? We all can be more than what we could ever imagine. No man or essay can tell the individual what they are able to become. This puts limits on the individual. Who says violence is not a common occurrence in the collective? Who defines what violence is? Peaceful protests and riots don't mean what they used to mean. Writing prompts. Create an original poem that tells a story in 100 words or less about our collective future. A future where everyone is valued for their whole authentic selves. Everyone is safe and everyone can thrive. Choose from one of the 5 prompts on the theme of our collective future. Collective thriving. Who do we need to be and what do we need to do for everyone to thrive? Avoid one-sided stories of our collective future where everything is perfect or where everything is terrible. Instead, think how the future will hold both bad and good, allowing us to exist in our wholeness. How will we struggle on this journey? How will we make choices toward our collective humanity over individual benefits? How can we make sure the planet thrives with us? There's authentic love and then belonging. What is required for us to create a sense of belonging for everyone? What is possible if we honor everyone's true selves? If everyone has a purpose and a role across generations and communities? What is value in the collective? Who determines this? As an individual, values mean different things. Will the collective judge and determine what is valuable and reject the individual's personal values? Focusing on collectivism versus the individual is a setup for authoritarian and codependent worldview. This assignment is teaching the student a belief system. If the assignment is going to be used as a teaching tool, shouldn't the assignment also include content on individualism and, in my experience, God? To include this, the student can learn about diverse points of view so they can discern what works best for themselves. Belonging. In the collective, who determines who belongs and who doesn't? What does the sense of belonging look and feel like, and who determines that? How can a collective honor everyone's truth, self, if the individual doesn't know who they are? If the authoritarian crowd rejects the individual, and the individual does not know who they are, this, on one hand, creates power, manipulation, judgment, and rejection. And on the other hand, depression, no self-worth, suicidal thoughts, and maybe even suicide. Cooperation, healing. What do we need to heal so that we can move toward collective thriving? What will be possible if we heal ourselves first? What is possible when we become aware of and take responsibility for the harms against Indigenous, Black, and other marginalized communities? What does it look like to heal whole communities? For any of the prompts, think of a single act that could move us toward collective thriving. When you think of stories that inspire greatness, Greta Thunberg, 16-year-old climate activist, Emma Gonzalez, March for Our Lives organizer, or Isra Hirsi, 16-year-old co-founder of the U.S. Youth Climate Strike. What do you think made them great? And then it goes into the writing tips. Okay. The healing section implies the child outside of the listed ethnicities should take responsibility for harming Indigenous, Black, and marginalized communities. How does this make the Caucasian reader feel? My son doesn't understand this. From his perspective, he is friends with many kids that he wouldn't consider marginalized, but within the collective, his friends are considered marginalized. This segregates kids into groups. Also, why is this assignment collectively telling the students Greta Thunberg, Emma Gonzalez, or Isra Hirsi are inspirational or great? If the student doesn't think these individuals are great, will they be rejected from the collective? I had my son do research on these individuals to form his own opinion, which was a really great discussion, by the way. Then the assignment finally gets to the writing tips. Why did the student have to go through a lecture about collectivism to get to the meat and potatoes of the assignments? Why is the belief system of collectivism even given at 10th graders as a topic? The next slide. On the left are the submission rules for this assignment. It shows broader taxpayer support for collectivism by the Idaho Commission on the Arts. What other programs do my tax dollars pay for that support collectivism? This slide shows examples of acceptable poetry. I highlighted snippets that concerned me. The overall tone of the poetry was angry and authoritarian, especially the one on the left. All 3 of them shared a deep sadness. Next one. In conclusion, this assignment alarmed me since I lived in the collective for so long as an atheist. I could see my son being molded without my knowledge into something I just escaped from. Since I pulled my son out of Boise Schools academics, I've seen tremendous improvement in him as an individual. He shows an appreciation when I tell him his point of view is okay. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you.
Thank you, Christy, for presenting. Would you be willing to take any questions?
Sure.
Are there any questions from the committee for Christy? Laura?
Do you have copies available?
Yes, I presented them to Brooke.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Really good presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got Isaac had a question. Go ahead,
Madam
Isaac.
Chair, did you approach any of the school administrators there in the Boise School District about these assignments and your concerns?
I did
And if
not.
You didn't? Okay.
I did not. I just pulled them out.
Okay.
Question, Reverend Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christy, I just want to thank you for your courage in being so self-disclosing.
Thank you.
You are awesome.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you so much, Christy, for presenting today.